Is homeownership like slipping out of reach for most young people these days? Could a housing crash actually make things worse? Are we like headed
Yeah.
back to a landlord-only society like we saw centuries ago? Let's dive deep into this, into why a housing market crash might not be the silver bullet that so many people are hoping for. Property prices, they're like soaring all over the U.S. And this is fueled in part by, those higher interest rates we keep hearing about. Adam Homes, they're a real estate data company, and they recently reported that homes are now unaffordable for like the typical American, and get this, a staggering 99% of U.S. counties. It's a tough market out there, both for buyers and renters. These high prices, they like create this ripple effect. Buyers struggle to afford a home. Renters face these like ever increasing costs, often needing multiple roommates just to make ends meet. And even those who own homes are facing challenges too. They got higher property taxes and the potential for capital gains to like exceed the IRS's $250,000 exemption when they sell.
So, for example, if you bought your home for, let's say, $300,000 and then you sell for $600,000, well, you've made a $300,000 profit. That's $50,000 above that exemption, meaning you'd likely owe taxes on that amount. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so a housing crash, it's bad for current homeowners, but wouldn't it be a good thing for those trying to, get on the property ladder? Well, not necessarily. Even with a crash, most people would still need a mortgage, right? The problem is crashes often lead to like tighter lending criteria, and that makes it even harder to qualify for a loan. Take the 2008 housing collapse, for example. Even though prices fell by about 20% from their peak, sales actually plummeted because lenders became like ultra conservative. A NerdWallet survey found that while 37% of non-homeowners cited a lack of down payment as their main obstacle, a larger group, 42%, pointed to stricter lending practices. This really highlights how important income stability, credit history, and your overall debt are, play a crucial role in mortgage approval. And here's another layer to this whole crash isn't a solution thing.
It's not just about individual buyers, right? We have to look at why the market isn't producing more affordable housing in the first place, right? That Morgan Stanley report from 2011, the one that talked about a rentership society,
Yeah.
it highlighted how institutional investors with their deep pockets often capitalize on market downturns. They swoop in, acquire properties at lower prices, and guess what? They often raise rents. We also have what's called the lock-in effect. Many current homeowners are like sitting pretty with those super low mortgage rates they locked in years ago. They have little incentive to sell, especially if they can rent out their properties at those, record high prices we talked about. And let's not forget about the challenges of new construction. Believe it or not, we're building fewer homes now than we did in the 1980s, even though our population has like significantly increased. Zoning regulations, NIMBYism that's not in my backyard, and those pesky local building codes all contribute to slower and more expensive construction. The Atlantic did a study, and they found that almost half the cost of building a new home comes from like local rules and preferences, not just the raw materials and labor. And to avoid all that red tape, many developers are shifting their focus away from new construction to renovations and flips. It's quicker, it's easier, and frankly, it's less of a headache. So we've got this perfect storm brewing, right? Fewer new homes are being built. Existing homeowners are holding on to their properties, and institutional investors are potentially driving up rental costs. Paints a pretty bleak picture for those hoping a crash will like magically solve the housing crisis. But here's where it gets even more complex. We haven't even touched on the elephant in the room: land. Land is a finite resource, and in many ways, it's become the golden ticket for developers. It's become their primary source of profit,
Right.
which makes them extremely risk-averse in a volatile market like this. High land prices, coupled with expensive development loans, further disincentivize new construction. It's a vicious cycle. This land conundrum actually ties into a fascinating historical pattern: the 400-year cycle of real estate. Essentially, every 400 years, real estate goes through this cycle of moving from being owned primarily by the elite to being accessible to the average person, and then back again. We're seemingly on the upswing of that cycle right now, where real estate is becoming increasingly concentrated in the hands of wealthy individuals and institutions. For a deeper dive into this 400-year cycle, check out a video on the How Money Works channel. It's a fascinating look into the history of real estate and where we might be headed.
And speaking of construction challenges, we can't forget about the rising cost of building materials, lumber prices, for instance. They've been on like a roller coaster ride these past few years. Makes it tough for developers to accurately budget for new projects. Then there's the labor shortage. The construction industry, it's really struggling to find skilled workers, and that of course drives up labor costs. It's that classic supply and demand issue, right? When demand is high, supply is low, prices go up.
So you've got higher land prices, higher material costs, higher labor costs, and a ton of regulatory hurdles. It's no wonder developers are kind of hesitant to take on new construction projects,
Yeah.
especially when renovations and flips offer like quicker returns and fewer headaches.
Yeah.
And here's another factor impacting affordability: the rise of short-term rentals. Platforms like Airbnb and VRBO, they've just exploded in popularity. And while they offer benefits for travelers, they've also contributed to a shrinking supply of long-term rental units. In some cities, like entire buildings have been converted into short-term rentals, leaving fewer options for those seeking a permanent place to live. This increased competition for rentals, it drives up prices, to make it even tougher on those with tight budgets. So where do we go from here? If a housing crash isn't the answer, and new construction faces so many obstacles, how do we even begin to tackle this affordability crisis? Well, that's a complex issue, right? No easy solutions. But there are things we can do to at least start moving in the right direction. For starters, we need to address those zoning regulations and building codes that are driving up construction costs. Streamlining the approval process and making it easier and faster to build new homes is key. This might involve, challenging NIMBYism and encouraging communities to embrace denser housing options like townhouses and apartments. We also need to find ways to incentivize the construction of affordable housing. This could involve tax breaks for developers who build units below a certain price point, or government subsidies to help lower the cost of construction. And finally, we need to think outside the box. Maybe it's time to explore alternative housing models like co-living spaces or tiny homes. Perhaps it's time to rethink our obsession with single-family homes and embrace more communal living arrangements. The bottom line is we can't keep doing things the way we've always done them and expect different results.
We need to be willing to challenge the status quo, experiment with new ideas, and prioritize housing as a basic human right, not just a commodity. It's a big challenge, but with creative thinking and a commitment to change, we can create a future where everyone has access to safe, affordable housing. This deep dive has uncovered some hard truths about the housing market. We've seen that a crash isn't a guaranteed path to home ownership. We've explored the challenges of new construction and the impact of institutional investors and short-term rentals. It's a lot to process, but hopefully you now have a better understanding of the forces at play in this constantly evolving market. Remember, knowledge is power. The more you understand about how the housing market works, the better equipped you'll be to navigate it, whether you're a renter, a homeowner, or someone hoping to become one someday. If you're hungry for more, I encourage you to check out the resources mentioned earlier. That video on the How Money Works channel about the 400-year cycle is a real eye-opener.
Yeah, it's a big challenge, but I really do believe that with some creative thinking and a real commitment to change, we can create a future where everyone has access to safe, affordable housing. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's a goal worth fighting for. And that about wraps up our deep dive into the complexities of the housing market. We covered a lot of ground today, from the affordability crisis to that myth of the housing crash as a solution. We explored the challenges of new construction, the role of land in the equation, and the impact of institutional investors and those short-term rentals. It's a lot to digest, I know, but hopefully you've gained some valuable insights into the forces at play in this ever-evolving market. Remember, knowledge is power, right? The more you understand about how the housing market works, the better equipped you'll be to navigate it, whether you're a renter, a homeowner, or someone hoping to become one someday.
And if this exploration has sparked your curiosity, I encourage you to check out those resources we discussed earlier. That 400-year cycle video on the How Money Works channel, it's a real eye opener. I got to say, it might just change the way you think about real estate. Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep the conversation going. Until next.